Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video. It is going to be all about all of the eyeshadow palettes that went unused in my collection in 2021. I have 12 palettes to share with you guys today, which actually is not bad considering that my eyeshadow palette collection currently consists of 151 eyeshadow palettes. Only 12 went unused, which is only about 8% of my eyeshadow palette collection. But if you guys are interested in seeing which 12 palettes in my collection did not get touched at all this year, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project panning content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I would love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's get into the video. Okay, you guys, as I was going through, I was actually kind of surprised by some of the eyeshadow palettes that ended up not getting touched at all last year, because some of these got a whole heck of a lot of use in 2020. And I think some of them I used so much towards the end of 2020 that maybe I like got burnt out with them, or some of them are just like palettes that I love using in the winter time, and then I like really did not do my makeup much at all this past winter in 2021. So I just thought it was really interesting to reflect on some of these. There's a few that I purchased this year that I just did not get around to testing or trying out, but let's jump into it. And let's jump into, maybe we'll start with the palettes that were like new to my collection this year that I didn't get around to trying, because maybe that's less exciting. I'm not sure. There are 3 quads that I did not get around to trying, and they're all from the ColourPop Zodiac collection. I feel like this Love is a Libra one, I feel like I did use, or maybe I just swatched, but it wasn't marked down on my spreadsheet as an eyeshadow palette that I reached for. And when I mark something as a use on my spreadsheet, it just means I reached into the palette for any shade. It doesn't mean I used the eyeshadow palette to create a whole look. It just means I went into the palette and at least reached for one of the eyeshadow shades. So Love is a Libra, this is what this one looks like. I did purchase 6 of the 12 Zodiac quads from the ColourPop collection, and I do enjoy the quads, but just didn't get around to trying 3 of them. I also have Pisces in the Sky, which is this really beautiful one, and I'm like disappointed in myself I did not get around to trying all of these. So there's Pisces in the Sky. And then finally, the one that I was like most excited for, and again, I swear I have reached for this at least one time, but I didn't mark it down, is Head Capricorn in Charge, which is this really beautiful cool toned quad. So I am going to be doing a series where I like randomly generate palettes to work on, and I'm going to start this series randomly generating a few palettes from these 12 palettes since they were neglected last year. So stay tuned for that video, but hoping to get some use out of these palettes in the near future. I think that was it for all of the new eyeshadow palettes that I brought in and did not get use out of. So jumping into the rest, I was actually really surprised to see that this one did not get used at all. This is my Dose of Colors Sassy Sienna's eyeshadow palette. I actually really enjoyed the Dose of Colors formula, and I really like these 5 pans. Usually I'll take these traveling with me, and while I did travel a little bit in 2021, it obviously wasn't as much as I have in years past before 2020. So I didn't get around to using this one at all. This is typically like a go-to spring or summertime palette for me. So I'm disappointed in myself I didn't use that one. From Kaleidos, I did not reach for the Futurism 3 palette at all. This is what this one looks like. This is a really beautiful palette, but not necessarily like my everyday color story. Although these 2 like neutral browns I really could wear just for everyday looks. So, and I also really do love this purple. I feel like I reached for this one too, but I'm just going by my spreadsheet, and I'm disappointed in myself for this. I definitely want to pull this out and get some use out of that. Like, let me just swatch. Like, this is just such a beautiful lilac lavendery silver. Like, I'm actually drooling right now. So I'm feeling like I need to create a look with this very soon. Next up, I have this one from Marc Jacobs. This is the Electric palette, and this obviously no longer exists. This was limited edition, and then also Marc Jacobs is doing something with their beauty line, who knows what. I did use this quite a bit in 2020. I have pan on this eyeshadow eyeshadow shade right here. And it took quite a while to hit pan on that shade. And I feel like after hitting pan on that shade, I like put this palette away and just never reached for it again. And again, I hit pan on this in 2020, so this did not get reached for at all in 2021. I don't know if this video is going up before or after my 2022 palettes on their last hurrah introduction, but I am including a couple of these palettes in that series in an attempt to get more use out of some of these or potentially declutter them, because clearly they're not getting used. Two palettes that I was really surprised to see on this list, because again, these were palettes that I was using so frequently towards the end of 2020. The first is the Pat McGrath Rose Decadence palette. This is the 6-pan eyeshadow palette that looks like this, and I was using this so frequently in 2020 that I actually hit pan on this shade right here, and the Pat McGrath shadows are actually relatively deep. So I use this palette so often. I also was really enjoying all of the metallics. I was raving about this palette at the end of 2020, and then I feel like because I used it so much, I was burnt out at the beginning of 2021 and then just never ended up reaching for this palette again. So this isn't a palette that I want to declutter by any means, but I do definitely want to pull it out and get some use out of it, because I remember loving that palette when I first got it. And in that same vein, I have the Baby One eyeshadow palette from Lawless. I again was using this so frequently at the end of 2020. I was loving mauve tone looks. I was reaching for this palette all the time for like these 4 shades right here, and this was like my go-to work look at the end of 2020, and then I just never reached for it at all in 2021. So I definitely want to pull this one back out. I remember this metallic shade right here being one of my just like absolute favorite shadows at the end of 2020. And then I don't know what happened in 2021. Bad things happened in 2021. So I do plan to pull that back out and get some use out of that. Next up, Melt Gemini. Didn't reach for this at all this year, and I'm very disappointed in myself for that. But again, I sort of fell off the wagon in terms of doing my makeup in October through the end of 2021, and this is a very fall toned or fall themed palette in my opinion, so that played a role into it definitely. But I love this eyeshadow palette. I've heard these palettes expire more quickly than other eyeshadow formulas sometimes do, so I do want to get use out of this, because obviously this is a more expensive palette. I do feel like the Melt formula takes a little bit more time to work with, but I still really enjoy their palettes, so need to pull that one back out. My only Natasha Denona palette that did not get used this year was my mini gold palette, and I've said on my channel before that this was not my favorite mini palette. I just don't necessarily know what to do with the matte shadows in this palette. This one specifically, like the green, this one is fine, especially for like even just like a one and done shadow, but I just was not inspired to reach for this one at all. However, when I was thinking like, well, should I just declutter this then, I also was looking at it and was like, no, I couldn't get myself to declutter this palette, so I need to use it. I need to use it. And then the final 2 palettes are both palettes that I have talked really highly about on my channel before, and I don't know why they didn't get used at all last year. But up first, I have the Dominique Cosmetics Latte palette. This should be a very easy palette for me to use on a day-to-day basis. It's neutrals with a couple of pops, and I really like this formula. Why did I not use this at all? I don't know, but I did not reach for this one at all. This is another one I'm going to be including in my palettes on their last hurrah, just because like it makes no sense to me that I didn't reach for it, so I want to like pressure myself to actually use that palette. And then finally, I have the ABH Amrezy palette. When I purchased this palette in, did this release in 2020 or 2019? Was this 2019? I was so excited for this palette when it released. I remember I purchased it, used it a ton, was really excited about the looks that I was creating with it, and then basically stopped using it. Like I feel like it's probably been 1.5 years since I've reached for this palette, which is ridiculous. So I either need to use this or declutter it. And that's where I'm at with that. But after that, that is going to conclude today's video. Those are the 12 eyeshadow palettes. Only 12. I'm quite proud of myself that it was only 12 eyeshadow palettes that did not get reached for at all last year. My eyeshadow palette collection is still like overwhelming me, but then the other part of me is like, I have 10 eyeshadow palettes in various baskets and carts throughout cosmetics retailers, so what am I even doing with my life? Anyway, that is gonna wrap it up for today's video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to watch. I would love to know in the comments below, are there any palettes that you did not reach for at all last year, or any palettes that you have been neglecting? I wanna know which ones they are. Thank you so much for watching and supporting my channel as you guys always do. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.